Hey folks, welcome back to another practice wrap up and reflections and just general check-in, what I've been up to during the month. These are the best videos to hear a bit more about my practice throughout its entirety, so not just the tarot and oracle facets, but the animal gnosis, the witchcraft, and just my general other interests. Anything from psychology to my gaming hobbies and just being outside. As you may have noticed, I'm only getting a couple of videos out a month at the moment on YouTube. My pain and health challenges are ongoing and quite intensified at the moment, so that's really all the update I want to do, but I'll update anyway if that changes. Hopefully it improves at some point, but I do have another exciting video coming out, hopefully at the end of August. There's stuff coming still. Today we're going to look at the usuals, so we're going to look at the tarot and oracle that I worked with, anything else that I engaged with that really stands out for my month, and also a couple of early birthday bits because August is my birthday month, but my dear friend sent me a parcel that came towards the end of July. I also have a book review, so I'm going to be reviewing Witches Among Us by Thorn Mooney, which was kindly sent to me for review by Llewellyn. Let you know what I plan on reading next, and just 𝗕𝗏. So that's what we're diving into today, and without further ado, let's jump into the decks first, because I know that's generally people's favourites. I wanted to show these in their tiny little boxes before I showed you the cards, and I'm showing you together because they're both minis and they're my most used decks throughout the month of July. The reason being is because minis are great to chuck in my combat pants and take to the duck pond with me, which we have been visiting loads. I call it the duck pond. There are ducks, there are geese, there are the most adorable little rat family. We've got some terrapins there, weirdly enough. They actually thrive really well there. I think they were abandoned many years ago. We've got crows and magpies, all kinds of songbirds. There's some foxes there. I'm not sure what else, but I've seen a few very small burrows. It's quite a thriving little spot. Generally the community, some of us try and come together and offer feed to the animals there to keep them ticking over, keep them well nourished, as well as them being able to forage for themselves. So one of the things that I was really excited about is that I found a better food mix to get that satisfies all of the birds over there, and then I take some different bits for the other sort of like critter, rodent type animals. I appreciate I've gone off on a tangent already, and this isn't decks. This is where I've been taking my two decks, Coastal Curiosities and Medicine cards for today, and trying to reconnect to a practice over there where I go over there and I pull myself a card or two. But these teeny tiny decks, as you can see, I have quite small hands as well, are absolutely perfect for that. I started this practice of taking a little deck over there, goodness, probably a decade ago actually. In fact, it wasn't a little deck. I used to take my Animal Totem Tarot, and then when I got my medicine cards for today, which is heavily out of print by the way, I thought that they were perfect. A lot of my animal gnosis working is founded in nature, in conservation, in education. It's not just about the magic, but the mundane, if we want to call it that. And then more recently, I have a Coastal Curiosities mini, which, as you can imagine, whilst I'm not at the coast, it's still very nature and animal infused. So they're a really nice meeting of an older love and I guess a newer love. The mini medicine cards, they actually have, as you can see, like a little write-up on them, which is quite nice because that's very different to the big ones which have nothing, and then you've got the larger book. And then the Coastal Curiosities with just its simple keyword. But of course, because I work with animal gnosis in particular, I do pay attention to the animals that come up. If I happen to recognise the flowers, this is giving me thistle vibes, but I'm not sure because there's a couple of plants that look like this. Then I would also take those into consideration. It's a really enjoyable extension of my practice over at the pond. And as I've been pulling a lot less cards this month for myself, these are definitely my most used as well as my most enjoyed. Tarot wise, there's really only one contender in terms of my personal practice. The Children of Ostara tarot, which you have probably seen if you've been around for a while on my channel, has been in like the last couple of wrap-ups and a few videos already, even though it was only purchased, I can't remember if it was like March, April time. It's such a beautiful poetic deck, and there's something about immersing oneself in the imagery as well before sort of going into what we might call like the quote-unquote traditional facets of the tarot. I'm continuously taken away by this deck, and it has just become a favourite. I will be honest, the plant information isn't something that's kind of sticking with me in memory very much. If you're not familiar, each of these decks has like a theme in, so I didn't manage to get hold of the Children of 𝗕𝗲, which I would have loved because it was animal themed. This one is plant themed, but it's in a really well woven capacity, and I don't mean like it's so subtle that it's not present, because it's very clear. Like I look at the wheat in the Empress straight away, and if there's a couple of plants visible, which there are here, both will be named. The naming's done well, the symbolism is done well, the poetry weaves the plant energy in, but it's not in a way where I can't take anything else from the cards. There's so much emotion and there's so much feeling, and they hit my senses in all of the right places, between the art style, the contained framing, which I personally really enjoy. I think it's why I enjoy this deck so much, even though it's really colourful, because it's held, and all of the other intricate little details, the feeling that comes through with the colour setting, the seasonal setting, the time of day or night. It's been a really immersive experience. I loved this deck so much, and I might have already said this, that I bought my sister a copy. It's just one of those where I've wanted to pick it up over and over and over again, and I really enjoy that because there's a different kind of intimacy that's built with repetition with a deck. And of course, it's no secret that I've got a sizable collection, and sometimes it takes a lot longer to bond with decks than others because of that, but this one is genuinely like poetry for the soul, and is bringing a little plant stuff into my practice, which we will touch on. Maybe we'll do that next and come back to the other oracles, because I've been really getting into plants lately. And I know that that sounds funny, because I will have told most people that I have just almost a non-existent green thumb historically. I did grow some beautiful rosemary and lavender in the garden, and then we were moved out, and by the time we come back it had been obliterated by the temporary tenants who were in here. I've always had I think it's a fairy castle cactus. I say always, I've had it for a couple of years now. It's not massive, but that's probably more to do with the pot that I've kept it in. I will probably upgrade it at some point, but it's the one thing that I can make flourish, other than usually a spider plant, but I just happen not to have one. Also, I'm really picky about plants, because not only do I seem to kill everything off, which then just seems tragic and pointless, but I have a cat who wants to eat everything. So the only thing she doesn't try to eat is the cactus, for obvious reasons. I recently saw, and I think I mentioned it in a previous month, an indoor rose, and it was being sold for only £2.50, and it's actually been flourishing really well. I've been looking after it as sort of an extension of learning to care for plants, but also my work with Freya. The only thing is, it has aphid, so now I'm like washing them off every day and just tending to it, because it was doing really well, and then some of the leaves started to be impacted. So it's actually still flourishing, but I'm just kind of battling what I think are aphids. It seems to be doing okay. I think if it hadn't have had those, it would have gone through a third bout of flowering, because as far as I'm aware, it should still be flowering in August and then stop. Then I have what I think, based on the shape, I think this is a Thanksgiving cactus. My sister bought it for me when we reconnected. For the first time ever, I haven't killed a succulent. It was having a wobble for a while, and then I bought some cactus and succulent mix, which I don't think it came with. And the fairy castle and that have been thriving. And then just to add into the mix, which is hilarious because it turns out it's also a really hard to look after plant. My parents travelled recently, and when they came back, they had brought me an aloe vera plant. In 3 years, I'll be able to actually like break off the leaves and use them. I do accidentally burn myself a lot, so it will be very useful. It's actually doing okay. Any browning you can see on the top of them, it came with. So far, so good. However, highly toxic to cats. So in the video, you can see it on my desk. It doesn't actually live on my desk. It's in a really high up place in a different room, trying to get sunshine still, but away from our cat. So yeah, I've been kind of green thumbing it a little bit and seems successful so far. Also just been absolutely besotted with the buddleia, which again, if people don't know, our beautiful buddleia that at one point was 18 foot high, and remember, buddleia is a bush, not a tree, so it did kind of get a little unruly. When we were moved out of our place, because originally the landlord wanted to sell it, the other tenants kind of trashed the garden and everything had to be cut back, and I asked them to try and preserve the buddleia, and they cut it back to completely to the base, and there was just a massive stump left with a big X in it. And if I can find a picture that I took for Instagram, I will insert it now. Buddleia is beautifully hardy. It's nicknamed the butterfly bush, which is why I was so in love with it and why I really wanted it in the garden. It also has just the most gorgeous aroma when it's in bloom, and our one always bloomed at the latter point of summer. As you can see, it's finally come back. I do need to get some string and try and tie some of them up, because I actually want it to grow upwards again, more like a tree. But for now, I'm not touching it because the butterflies, the bees, the moths, a bunch of different types of flies, they are all absolutely loving it. I had some really just frustrating and challenging results and health discussions recently, and I went and sat out into the garden and I sat and watched all of the insects that were engaging with the buddleia for around 2.5 hours, I think it was. It was just such a helpful way to regulate myself again in sort of like a meditative, focused way, and try and calm my mind and really, just bring myself back into my body gently. It has been just thriving. Unfortunately, I don't think I've caught any butterflies using it, but some bees in terms of video. Mostly I've just been sitting there and enjoying it. So yeah, I kind of wanted to put that nature bit in because honestly, it's been the biggest part of my month. I have rescued a few butterflies. I have been with a few in their last moments. That's been the absolute bulk of a month that has been highly, I guess, focused around pain and health and hospital appointments, and probably I'm going to do much of the same this month. So it's been a way to sort of rejuvenate and make sure that I can continue functioning and also showing up for community and others and working. This is the Compendium of Witches Oracle. It's the mass market edition, so it does look slightly different to the original indie. And I've worked with this a couple of times during July. I actually have a video coming out on Patreon in August that is one of my meanders. They're like long walkthrough, review, experiential discussions through a deck, how I use the deck in practice, the deck's own theming, you know, what relationship I have with it, that kind of thing. So it's more about the familiarity of practice and then where it slots in. Themes with this are more about the craft and working with deity in general, but also kind of where this sits in practice in contrast to decks such as the Weavers. So my Patreons on a certain tier and up, I think it's the library tier, in August will get a full meander through this deck, and therefore I had it out and was thinking of all the ways I was using it. Plus I took them through a reading at the end. The reading picture can actually already be seen on Instagram, but I didn't give away the personal facets of the reading that I take people through. I came back to the reading and looked at more of a community message. I do really love this deck. It is different to how I use the Weavers, although there is some crossover. Other decks that there's sort of like a crossover with, as like this, the Weavers, Call of the Morrigan, also the European Goddesses and Spirits deck, which I have previously shared a walkthrough of, I believe, and a review on my channel as well. And they all kind of sit in their specific deity spirit work spots, but none of them sort of take the space of the other, which I think is why they currently all work well in my practice. And without too many spoilers for my patrons, this is more of a quick draw process for me. There's still the archetypal facet, but the way that I work with this deck is a lot faster in terms of duration than the Weavers. A Weaver will sit out with me for sometimes months on end. I haven't actually changed out my last Weaver yet still in the end. I figured the fact that I was having trouble connecting to them meant that perhaps they should stay out for longer. And if you don't know how this deck's set up, it has the voices, which are the witch archetypes, and then it has the whispers, which are a selection of like tools, symbols, like things that are related to the craft and it perhaps enhance or infuse them. I do use other decks with this as well. It can become quite a sort of patchwork situation. I got 2 really meaningful readings from it throughout July, so yeah, it was a standout for me. One of them I kept private, as I say, the other one I actually take people through the process in the upcoming video. Moving into books, as many know, I've been, well, I say reading, listening to as well, Witches Among Us, which was kindly sent to me by Llewellyn. And this is written by our lovely Thorn Mooney. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Thorn already. Just to give you a taste of the context, because there's not really much else I can show you, but I do want to review it. We've got what witch means, witchcraft in context, many types of witchcraft, what witches do, what witches believe, witch materials, rules of witchcraft, witch communities, and witches in conversation. And every single one of these has a suggested reading, which doesn't surprise me knowing Thorn, and that really well sort of researched facet focus on ensuring that there are many voices and many infusions into this. So it's an understanding of contemporary witchcraft and Wicca. So let's dive into what I thought about it. While I didn't find the audiobook narration an easy listen, which if you're confused and you're like, they sent you the book, I ended up purchasing the audio so that I could get the review done because of pain and mobility issues that had moved into my hands and arms, and the narration wasn't for me. So I don't know if that made the introduction feel a little more dry. I don't know, but I am still really glad that I read this. And I feel like Thorn's voice that she has and offers online, it's traverses into her writing. She's someone that I respect, and I was really curious about how her kind of academic, spiritual and professional backgrounds would weave together here into this discussion of witchcraft. And the blend comes through really well. It feels grounded. As I say, it feels mostly accessible for, I don't quite want to say newcomers to witchcraft. There's kind of a we'll get into that. With this in mind, it's clear that the book wasn't written for me, and that's not a criticism. I had a sense of this going in, that I wasn't the target audience, but I do enjoy knowing which books that I can recommend to others, especially from different levels of experience or different needs for what they're looking for. So it is one that I will keep in mind for that exact reason. I feel like there was a good outlining of like key historical and socio-political context early on. Things like the legal recognition and how religion intersects or doesn't with magical practice. And some of these portions and chapters in particular feel helpful for readers coming in with, you know, preset assumptions, biases, or outdated ideas of what witchcraft is or isn't and how it sort of came to be. And then that gets fleshed out further along. And there's a gentle but steady thread of reclamation and reconnection that runs throughout, particularly in how it relates to things like the land, culture, and identity. I did appreciate the thoughtful critique throughout. There are discussions of appropriation within modern witchcraft, especially. I did find myself wishing that the same critical lens had been applied earlier, especially in discussions around like new thought and manifestation. But the book does call out the dangers of things like victim blaming in some of those ideologies later on. And I feel that that's really important and necessary as well, along with the other discussions that were a bit more fleshed out earlier on. I guess the book has kind of like a wide angle view in play, and that is really helpful because when I think about it, as I said earlier, even the beginner witch seems less the aim for this book, and rather it's most, in my opinion, aimed at the non-witch, someone who is in a relationship with a practicing witch, whether they're new or advanced. Thorn continuously acknowledges the diversity of practices, belief systems, and also terminology in a way that kind of avoids boxing witchcraft into any single definition, which was something I was curious about and one of the reasons I did want to read this. And there are discussions as well around blended traditions, how language can aid and confuse, and kind of breakdowns of things like ritual versus spell work. And again, I think that's where it felt approachable, if that makes sense. And there's other things like symbol and communication, but what I took away from it most was the fact that all of the exploration happened without defaulting to like a one truth fits all perspective, which is very important for a book like this for it to be successful, in my humblest of opinions. As the chapters went on, they do feel more engaging to me. The insights kind of, again, talks about nuanced differences between magic and religion and how society sort of polices and permits belief, depending on its kind of like perceived legitimacy. And there was also a very welcome inclusion of therapeutic and psychological framing too. Again, no one approach sort of favoured over another. The book overall touches on how witches can sort of show up in and for their communities, and the, I guess, a bit of a tension between individual practice and collective responsibility. So that's all addressed. It's not a how-to witch book, and so there's less sort of actions beyond spell work outside of those discussions. And what I realise is it would be greedy to kind of expect that from this particular book. If people found themselves hungry for more, that sort of suggests that they've got more of an interest, and then they can go and ask someone, or, you know, dive into it online, or more books, or whatever it is. One of the things that I noted down that I particularly valued was the critique of gender essentialism and the acknowledgement of ongoing shifts in like the wider witchcraft community. Topics like privilege, marginalisation, economic access, and online discourse, because a lot of this is online nowadays as well. They're all touched upon. It's like a broad sweep, but each is done well and feels timely and important. And really my takeaway was that it's very clear. The conclusion is a nice, warm, bit more personal wrap up, which I enjoyed, and it kind of reaffirms the book is ultimately for the curious, not necessarily the already committed or practicing. And for what it aims to do, it felt like it did it well. It's probably not one that I'm going to return to for my own practice, but I am glad I experienced it, because I feel like if someone asked me for this kind of respectful, thoughtful resource, then it's one that would be on my list, because I feel like it tries to be broad and inclusive without avoiding pinning key facets of witchcraft. So yeah, it was overall an interesting read, but not the best audio. I am very much a lover of the writers doing their own audio, but I also realise that writers don't always get granted, nor do they want to do that. And I'm sure that the person who did the audio is beloved by other people. It just wasn't a fit for me, and I'm really, really fussy about audiobooks. So I do think that may have had a little bit of a difference of my enjoyment. And of course I've gone back through after and sort of looked at the other reading resources that were mentioned, because they're not mentioned per chapter in the audiobook, which I think is good. So yeah, that's Witches Among Us. I will show you what I'm planning on reading next. Now I will potentially dive into another audiobook alongside and have like a bit of a non-practice based palette cleanser, just because I haven't read any sort of fantasy or even facets of other parts of my craft for a bit now, because there is a couple of books around death and death work written by morticians and various other people that I have that I'm quite intrigued by as well. But in terms of kind of the craft or tarot, the other book that Llewellyn sent me was this lovely one, The Psychic Art of Tarot. I don't feel like this is going to be a good one to ingest the audio of. I have a feeling that it might be easier for me to physically get through it. I'm not obviously going to be able to try every single exercise before I review this, otherwise the review would take absolute months. But I do intend to try a couple of them. I'm really intrigued. I've never read any of Matt's books before, but Matt's books come highly praised by quite a lot of people that I know. Here you can see some of the contents. So it has a very big lean-in on psychic tarot in particular, which doesn't surprise me because, as far as I understand it, Matt has a psychic witchcraft kind of book, and that was the one that a lot of people had recommended. But I was really intrigued about the infusion in tarot in particular. And I like a tarot book that has like a dedicated focus that makes it feel a little bit different, a little bit fresh. I thought that that would be a really fun kind of way to dive into Matt's work. And here, look, you can see the plethora of exercises and techniques. Thank you for giving us the pages of how to jump into them quickly, because so many books don't do this. And I have to say, I have appreciated the layout of the Llewellyn books in that instance. So yeah, I'll be getting into this. Whether I can review it for August will be another thing, to be honest. So we'll just dive into other bits really quickly, and then I can sort of explain the other video that I've got coming out, because the two things sort of complement each other. So I've been getting really into my dice divination, and this gorgeous scrolly mat is a dice mat. And it's brilliant because originally I was rolling either directly onto the table, which is the most hideous sound. And if you roll onto anything softer that's not flat, the dice and how they land can get sort of ambiguous, which is not helpful. So I have been loving dice divination, and it's really, really cool. So you can roll it up and travel about with it if you want to. I more like it for storage, and you can actually fit a couple of traditional sized D&D dice in there, or other kinds of dice, but of course, different dice sets have different amounts. There's 2 in here, and so that's 14 dice, which I think is really, really fun and really handy. And I absolutely love this. It's fake leather. I can't remember exactly what it's made from. So much nicer than just throwing it. I'm quite noise particular and noise sensitive, I guess. I love really loud music of my choosing, but then those kind of clangy sounds I don't enjoy so much. So it's been good for my ears. It's stopped me sort of cringing, and yeah, it's called a little traveller's scroll or something like that, and it was off of a UK dice website, but I think there's quite a lot of them around. And then my lovely friend sent me an early birthday package. In some of it, because I'm not going to show all of the dice, which brings me to a future video, later in the month a couple of friends and I have a video / tag that we wanted to bring out, sharing our love of dice and divination, because we have all really just fallen for it recently, and dice is something I've been using a lot in my practice when I am reading, and occasionally just using the dice on their own. The main dice casting system that I use is still the one by Dawn and Lisa, which is absolutely brilliant. I've got my little bookmark here so that I can get into the quick references, because my memory is still not retaining all of this information. But this is a free resource, as I said previously. Look at this bookmark, which I absolutely love. I love that they brought dice into my world in a bigger way. So my friend sent me this lovely package. It had some of these charms in, because they know that I'm creating a charm casting kit over time, and it actually has some really meaningful bits in there for me especially. So really, really cute. Thank you to Lennox for sending me goodies. This beautiful sticker, I love that, came with. And then there were 4 sets of dice. I'm only showing you one because in this upcoming video and tag, you're going to see some decks and you're going to see all of my dice and where I keep them. So I didn't want to do too many spoilers, which is why I haven't showed you my dice goblin box, only this. But one of the 4 were one of 2 sets that are on my wish list, you know, absolutely coveted, and they both happened to be in America, and I can't be paying customs and stuff for dice, and these aren't ones you can get over here. They are exclusive to particular brands. I forget, it's like Finch and something, I think. Their branded ones come with an extra, 1 normal D6 and 1 extra that's got these paws on them. So these were, just absolutely coveted. They are my kind of colour, they are my kind of theming. So we've got some moss in here and some flowers, but as you can see, they look very different to my other mossy flower ones, which you may have seen before. These have like a yellowy green tinge to them, very gorgeous sort of swirly bronze lettering, and give me that kind of like earthy decay, you know, late summer, early autumnal vibe, which is the general aesthetic that I live and immerse myself in the most. And I felt like they'd be a really good pairing for a lot of my decks, because a lot of my decks sort of fit that kind of vintage, antiquated kind of vibe. So yeah, I am absolutely elated with these, and if anyone's thinking that I'm impatient, I actually would have waited to open my birthday presents, because I'm very, very patient. I mean, as I say, my birthday's not till the latter part of August. But my lovely friend said, open when you get them, probably to ensure that I didn't get any of the dice as well. So yeah, she sent me 4 sets. I also did one of my newsletters recently. My newsletter is wonderfully irregular, meaning it's not going to bombard your inbox. I used to say it was bi-monthly to quarterly. Sometimes it's half a year, because it has been probably 7 months since the last one. That did go out recently, and for those who are interested in what my newsletter is like, because of what I send the newsletter from, I will actually put a link in the bio so that you can have a full taster of what it's like. It will take you to a web page. In that, bit of a discussion, a touch base with me. I tend to have freebies in there. So this time I actually released a really fun animal gnosis quiz, which I poured a lot of heart and soul into, even though it seems silly and fun on the surface, but it does give you a taster of what my animal gnosis readings can include. There isn't really like the folklore and too much of the educational aspects, because I have to save some stuff for my Patreons. And of course you don't get all the complimentary workbooks and spreads and stuff that go with it. But if you would like a taster and like to explore your animal for the month, then you can go over and try that quiz. And the quiz will take you to a website at the end that will give you a little write-up and some keywords on your animal for the month. And there are 6 to get, and I will say that there are 2 animals out of the 6 that no one has got yet. It's equal as well, equal possibility. So that was interesting. There's a couple of free spreads in that one in particular. I talk about what I've been up to, what's going on, what's to come. That's kind of the vibe of the newsletters. So yeah, that also went winging its way out, and if you want to see what it's all about before committing to subscribing, check the link below. Oh, there is one final thing I want to add in, and then we will finish up. I would love to show these art pieces and share what a crazy cat lady I really am, and then let you all go. So I have 5 in total. I think actually this was my very first one. So over time she had said she couldn't get hold of these box frames anymore and moved to smaller ones. Also, you can see the card started off cream and has changed to white. I'd love to share her socials and stuff, but they're not actually active, like at all. There's not an online website. I can't really do anything more than just share my love of her artwork, unfortunately. They are very telling because there are cats doing other things and some cats looking, I guess, happier. I really love the grumpy and bizarre looking ones in particular. The second one was this one, which kind of is adorable but looks strung out, which I can really relate to. I believe I started buying her pieces early 2023. When we have a look, they'll have the dates on them anyway. So yeah, this is the third one I got. This is the existential crisis cat, as I call them, and they had a fun, colourful background. Bit of a theme going on here with the black cats as well. I do love black cats and tuxedo cats. I know that we have a Bengal. She was a rescue, so she was the one who needed rescuing at the time, and I adore her. I do seem to favour these in particular. Let me show you the other 2. And so these are my 2 most recent ones. As you can see, one was from 2023, but of course hadn't been bought yet, and actually one from 2025, so one of her newest ones. And when I was there, I couldn't decide between these 2 in particular because of course this fits the usual grumpy vibe that's going on, and I love the fact that a bird was sitting on their head. But then this one had like a witchy coven feel. It's probably just me. All it is there's 4 cats and a moon in the background. I have just seen what I wanted to see. So I chose this one in the end, and that was when she gifted me these cuties as well. And as you can see, it does have her name at the bottom, AGA, and then REIN. She actually gave me some really funny stickers and postcards as well. One of the stickers, I think the cat's smoking and it says fuck off. So that's the kind of vibes. There's cats drinking, there's cats doing all sorts of things. It really is just the kind of art style that absolutely delights me. I could totally imagine these cats in like a storybook or a comic or something. And they are what adorn my mostly witchy bookshelves. So yeah, these are scattered around my witch room. Big shout out to one of my favourite artists. She's lovely. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this very long video, let you go, and hopefully I'll be back at some point by the end of August with a very fun video around dice, divination and decks. Bye.